Agora, no período da tarde, no sequenciamento lógico que o Jim Poisson mencionou na parte da manhã, nós vamos tratar de um tema que é estruturante, que é a banda larga e, obviamente, o tamanho dela, né? Então, o painel que nós vamos falar sobre como é que a banda larga tem um papel preponderante no futuro do mundo digital. Eu tenho currículos aqui dos panelistas, alguns em português e alguns em inglês. Então, eu vou lê-los na língua original e quem precisar de headset, por favor, não deixe de pegá-lo lá fora. So, we have resumes in Portuguese and English, and we're going to read some of them in Portuguese. So for those international participants that would like to understand the Portuguese read, we do have headsets outside for you. So our moderator is already a known person to us, Santiago Gutierrez, chairman of WITSA, or I should say, very future former chairman, as we had the vote for the new chairman for the next 2 years. So I'd like to invite Santiago Gutierrez. Salve de palmas para ele, por favor.
Thank you, Roland.
Next panelist member is Manu Bhardwaj. Manu is a senior advisor for technology and internet policy, reporting to the Undersecretary of State for Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment. Manu serves as a key advisor to the Undersecretary on a variety of international economic matters, including technology and internet policy. At the State Department, Manu has reported directly to 3 U.S. ambassadors, Ambassador Daniel Sepulveda, then Ambassador Terry Kramer, and then Ambassador Philip Verveer. Manu has been an attorney at Wilkie Farr and Gallagher and a judicial law clerk to a federal judge on the United States District Court for the District of South Carolina. Manu has also been a staff member at the White House Counsel's Office to the Honorable William J. Clinton, a legislative staff assistant at the U.S. Senate's Judiciary Committee to the Honorable Patrick Leahy, and staff member to the Honorable Edward M. Kennedy of the United States Senate. Manu graduated with a Bachelor of Arts from Northwestern University and a Juris Doctor from Michigan Law School. Salve de palmas para Manu, por favor. Bruno Ramos, Regional Director, ITU Americas Regional Office. Bruno Ramos is graduated in Electronic Engineering from the Escola Politécnica da Universidade de São Paulo and holds 2 master's degrees on telecommunications regulation and the other in economic engineering from the University of Brasilia. In 2012, Mr. Ramos started a PhD program in law and international policies also at the University of Brasilia. The career of Bruno Ramos focused the telecommunications sector and the information and communication technologies related issues. He worked for Telesp and Telebras in Brazil during 15 years. Since 2013, Bruno Ramos works for ITU as Director of the Americas Regional Office and is responsible for maintaining and developing relationship with high-level representatives of ITU states members, regional and international organizations of the Americas region for the adoption of initiatives and projects related to the development of telecommunications and ICT sector. Please, salve de palmas para Bruno Ramos. Next panelist, Sergio Paulo Gallindo. Sergio Paulo, presidente da Brasscom, Associação Brasileira das Empresas de Tecnologia de Informação e Comunicação, advogado e engenheiro, mestrando em Direito Político e Econômico na Universidade Presbiteriana Mackenzie. Mestre em Ciência da Computação pela University of Texas, Austin, Estados Unidos, com o apoio da Fulbright International Fellowship Program. Bacharel em Direito pela Universidade de São Paulo, Larga de São Francisco, e engenheiro eletrônico pela Universidade Federal do Rio de Janeiro. Foi diretor-presidente da British Telecom no Brasil de 2009 a 2014, onde liderou expressivo crescimento, tendo ocupado posições de direção da BT para a América Latina de 2005 a 2008. Atua na Brasscom desde 2009, tendo sido eleito membro do Conselho de Administração para o biênio 2012-2014. Foi também vice-presidente da Nortel no Brasil e diretor executivo de negócios corporativos da GVT. Atuando em tecnologia desde 1980, Sergio Paulo liderou relevantes desenvolvimentos de software no Brasil e nos Estados Unidos, a implantação de complexas redes de comunicação, bem como a negociação de centenas de milhares de dólares na execução de contratos. No direito, na sua atuação é voltada para o direito político e econômico e direito tributário, M&A, direito comercial e law, e em economia. Análise econômica do direito. Por favor, uma salva de palmas para o Sérgio Paulo Gallindo. E por último, Roberto Boisson, deMarca, graduated as an electrical engineer from PUC-Rio, Brazil, and earned a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Southern California, USC, USA. He was the 2014 IEEE president and CEO. He was also the 2000-2001 president of IEEE Communications Society and the founding president of the Brazilian Telecommunications Society. He is an IEEE fellow and a full member of both the Brazilian Academy of Sciences and Brazilian National Academy of Engineering. Professor deMarca was scientific director for the Brazilian National Research Council, CNPq, and was a member of FINAP's Presidential Advisory Board. He held visiting appointments in several organizations, including AT&T Bell Laboratories, NEC Research Labs in Europe, and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. Dr. deMarca was selected in 2013 by the Época Weekly magazine as one of the 100 most influential persons in Brazil. In 2014, he received the Personality of the Year in Telecommunications recognition from the IT Professionals Association of Brazil, ACESPRO. Please, salva de palmas para o Dr. deMarca. And without further ado, I'd like to call Santiago Gutierrez.
Thank you very much, Robert. How do you do? Welcome. We certainly have a panel of not only distinguished colleagues, but of experts in what we're going to talk about. We listened before to Sumatra talking about the state of the global readiness, and we saw very interesting, graphs over there. And both Sumatra and myself, in our respective speeches and presentations, always referred to Internet. We never mentioned broadband or Banda Larga. And that was intentional, at least on my behalf, because there's a distinction, particularly in terms of penetration and connectivity to each one of them. I'm sorry that I'm, my back is towards you, but I need to see the faces of my panelists, okay? Appreciate it. We're going to talk here mostly about broadband, if possible. Obviously, we can talk about internet as well. It'll be equally interesting. And without further ado, I'm going to pick your brains for approximately an hour, okay? You can pick mine as well if you like. But I'm going to keep your brains, pick your brains, or try to. I'm going to ask both Manu and Bruno to go first with some slides that they have that relate. I know that in the case of Manu, he's got some slides that refer to the status of connectivity in Latin America, right? Bruno, most likely you also have some figures related to that. Okay. Okay, very good. So Manu, if you don't mind, will come first, then will come Bruno, and then Sergio, and then Roberto. Tá bom? Obrigado. Manu, please.
Thank you. It's great to be here today with this distinguished panel. For me, as we are here in Brazil, I thought it would be very useful for us to get a sense of the state of connectivity in the Americas. And I think you can extrapolate from our regional position to the global context. But in the Americas, roughly 90% of our region is covered by mobile broadband. However, a closer examination of this figure reveals that only about 50% are connected or online, meaning that half of the population, while being in a region with coverage, cannot actually connect to the mobile internet. So why? Why is that the case? There are a couple factors. One is limited affordability among segments of the population. 2, lack of digital literacy or digital skills. 3, lack of locally relevant content. But we do have some good news. The internet's economic benefits are increasingly shifting to the Americas. The internet audience in our region grew 23% in the past year and now represents 8% of the global audience. No surprise, Chile, Brazil, other countries are leaders, followed by Argentina, Colombia, and Peru. No surprise that there are other countries that are lagging in terms of their internet adoption rates. Some adoption rates as low as 41% or 46%. There's a reason why access, I would say, may be relatively high in Colombia, but lower in Bolivia. There's a reason why it may be high in Chile, but lower in maybe Guatemala. I would say that some governments are doing much more in terms of policies to facilitate access for people, particularly in remote areas. And the starting point for every country is to have a clear and comprehensive plan, a strategy, that will allow for private investment, encourage competition, remove bureaucratic obstacles, and take full advantage of libraries, hospitals, and other community centers. So last year, the United States launched something called the Global Connect Initiative. This Global Connect Initiative looks to bring 1.5 billion additional people online by 2020. It also recognizes that the internet is a key means of achieving the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, which was also just adopted last year. The SDGs include things like ending extreme poverty, providing better health care, better education, and our point is that the internet is a way to achieve all of those goals in the SDGs. How do I do the next slide?
The next slide, please.
Next slide. For the Global Connect initiative, I just want to kind of quickly go over a few pillars. First, it's to mainstream the view, and this is a new idea for folks in development agencies, international development organizations. It's a new idea. It's surprising to us, but it's a new idea, which is that the internet and internet connectivity is just as important to every country's economy as traditional infrastructure, roads, ports, electricity. New idea for folks in development. Another point is to highlight how countries need to integrate connectivity as part of their overall national development strategy. And the third point is to think about multilateral development banks like the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, think about financing companies, and highlight how the internet is something that they should be supporting through public-private partnerships, through greater financing from the World Bank, and really trying to use our leverage in encouraging as much activity in this regard as we can. And finally, trying to help governments build their tech capacity by introducing them to real-life industry experts and showing them industry-driven efforts to help connect remote areas. Here's the challenge that we have. This is basically a graph of internet adoption, broadband adoption. As you can see, developed countries are progressing along at a reasonable rate with 77% adoption currently. This is ITU data, which is based on their State of the Broadband report. Developing countries are at the 31% mark. What's remarkable to me looking at this graph is it doesn't appear that the divide is closing. Over time, it's hard to really find a lot of progress in the benefits of the internet and digital technology spreading to developing countries and least developed countries. And that's really a challenge that we're trying to help find solutions for through Global Connect with industry and with others. Of course, as I mentioned, we know the challenges. Why are some countries lagging? Lack of funds for infrastructure, minimal technical expertise, in some cases corruption, political instability, in some cases restraints on free speech. Well, I had one more slide, but that's okay. In general, our hope here is through Global Connect to see a doubling of private and public funding for internet connectivity until 2020. This gives you a general summary of the initiative. Our goal is also, and so that funding should come from the World Bank, it should come from internet leaders. Our goal was also to kind of make governments realize that providing broadband and better internet connectivity is in all of government agenda, not just the communications ministry, the finance ministry, the health ministry, the education ministry, that the benefits of the internet and better broadband access for citizens is something that all government ministries need to pay close attention to. In April, at the spring IMF Bank Fund, Secretary Kerry and President Jim Kim brought together all of the heads of the multilateral development banks, finance ministers from over 20 countries, and we announced over 65 connectivity efforts valued at over $20 billion. Our goal is to provide a clearinghouse of information for folks that are interested in learning more about industry-driven efforts to bring more people online, and also encourage and incentivize more action in this regard, particularly by advising governments on what are some of the policies, how to create the enabling framework for growth. As far as our next steps, for every April, every October, working with IEEE, and I am really excited that someone from IEEE is here, but working with IEEE, we've been holding Global Connect stakeholder conferences during the Bank Fund meetings, and our next one will actually be in Washington in just a few days, where we're bringing together, again, the finance, the tech, the government, the industry, trying to bring people that have maybe been working too much in silos together to find solutions to provide better connectivity to their country. And we're also working with countries where our assistance is requested to help them deliver on their broadband goals, connecting all their schools by X year, trying to provide more high-speed internet access to universities. We're in active conversations with dozens of countries to try to help them get the financing, the technical expertise, and the other assistance to really strengthen their broadband strategies in their own country. I'll pause there, and I'm happy to take questions afterwards, too.
Okay. Thank you very much, Manu. Just to make a very quick wrap-up, you talk about three causes that are sort of restraining connectivity growth in the Americas. One is affordability, the other one are digital skills, lacks of digital skills, and the other one is lack of local content. On the other hand, you also mention, not necessarily for the Americas, but in general for the globe, restrictions to free speech, not sufficient investment funds, in some cases corruption. Okay? The reason why I mention all this is because the measures that you mentioned, the high-level ones, where having a strategy at a country level counts a lot. And then you also said fostering competition. Okay? The reason why I say all this is because in the next round, I'm going to ask you this question. I don't want you to answer right now, okay? From your experience and from the U.S. Department experience, which are the two key factors that wage the most from all of the ones that you talk? I mean, we don't have enough money. So if we got to invest, which factors we need to invest on, okay? But we don't have the budget for all the things that you said, right? Okay, thank you. Bruno, please, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon for everybody. It's a real pleasure to be here with you today. I'd just like to thank very much for the invitation and to be here with you just to discuss this important point of the broadband. Because we have a short time, and for me it's most important to talk to you, just to answer your questions and just to try to debate with us here. But I'm going to divide my speech in two parts. One is where we are today, and the other one, where we are going to. So this is the two main points, just to analyze what we are doing today, based on the previous experiences and objectives, and try to show you the experiences and also the activities to the near future and probably 2013, just to try to reach the objectives of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's important. I'm going to touch this and very brief during my presentation. So where we are. We have a lot of statistics. So I try to choose some statistics from our Measuring the Information Society. It's a publication of the ITU. So each year we publish a report on the ICT's statistics. So this year the publication will be in next November. So, and also we have a lot of initiatives, and one of them is the Broadband Commission. The Broadband Commission was created in 2011 and established 5 targets. The targets were making broadband policy universal, making broadband affordable, third one, to reach broadband homes, 4, getting people online, and 5, achieving gender equality in access to broadband by 2020. So I'm going to talk a lot of things that you touched, so it's almost the same. So I'm try just to show different things, but it's almost the same. Making broadband policy universal is try to work with the countries, and one parenthesis here is it's our work in the ITU to work with the countries, the administrations, and also to the private sector in order to work with them in the developing of legal frameworks, legal broadband plans, etc. So today, some data. The number of countries with national broadband plans stands as 151, around 151, with 38 without. So we have in the ITU 193 countries. And according to the ITU data, we have 7 countries that are working and planning to introduce a national broadband plan. So broadband plan are a strategy that includes a plan, a strategy policy to broadband, digital plan, digital agenda, ICT plan, a strategy, everything. And in Brazil, for instance, the Brazilian government published the National Broadband Plan in 2010, and Brazil is trying to implement the objectives from this plan. The second one, making broadband affordable. So for us, it's important to achieve entry-level broadband services that should be affordable, and also try to make some exercise with the developing countries in order to include people using these affordable services plans. So, for instance, we have a huge discrepancy in affordability persist. So we have let me see here, in developed countries, a broadband package costs 1.7% of the average income. And in developing countries, it's around 31%. So you can see here that the discrepancy is enormous. So one thing that is important to reach is to making new entry-level broadband services plans to allow people to enter in the service. The third one, broadband homes. So to access to broadband to the internet at home is one of the more inclusive ways to bring people online. So we are talking about, and I agree, that the mobile broadband is one thing that it's very important for developing countries with a lack of infrastructure. But for sure, trying to also work in the broadband services to the homes, it's other important thing, because you can allow people to use more data with more broadband with less prices. The fourth, getting people online. So it's something that we need to think. We are trying to implement a lot of infrastructure, to put a lot of money and invest in infrastructure, but also we try to allow people to get online. How to do that? Is it to try to train people? You said that also. Because, you know, it's not only to, in some developed countries, as Portugal, for instance, they have a lot of infrastructure, and also they are trying to teach people, trying to capacitate people to get online. Because we have sometimes the infrastructure, but we don't have the skills just to enter. And the fifth, that is where we are, achieving gender equality, the objective of the Broadband Commission for 2020. The idea is to get gender equality in access to ICTs and broadband. So, for instance, in 2015, ITU and the UN Women, in collaboration with various partners, launched the action plan to close the digital gender gap. It's, I think you remember that it's 2015, and we have already huge differences between men and women accessing the internet and accessing the services online. So I was in Colombia 3 weeks ago, and we discussed that in the gender panel, and it's amazing that you can see that around 70% of women received some kind of violence online. 70%. So we need to work on that. But I don't have much time. I'm going to where we are going to. So I'm going to talk to you about 4 topics. About the next generation of mobile, next generation of fixed broadband, so even for mobile, and next generation of broadband. The third one, satellite, and fourth, the Internet of Things. Okay, thank you. For development. So we have this development of 5G in the next generation of mobile, and the mobile infrastructure is and will be the most important infrastructure that will allow people to be connected. So the development of 5G will allow new companies to enter in the market, and also to allow new facilities and to provide people with new services and new applications. Next generation of networks and fixed broadband. We have also a huge development of fixed technologies that will play a vital role in providing connectivity of mobile and fixed backhaul. So ITU, we estimate that we have 884 million fixed broadband subscription in 2016. And the idea is to increase 8% up to 2020. Satellite. The idea is to invest a lot because with satellite, we can support a lot of activities as e-learning, m-learning, telemedicine, e-health, environment, and also the using satellite to disaster relief. So it's very important also. And to finish my presentation, the fourth topic for the future is the Internet of Things for development. For instance, in health, sensors are being used to monitor the cold chain delivery of vaccines. In managing water, to put sensors to manage water and to make smart cities. And of course, the Internet of Things deployments and by now increase the high and low income countries and developing also the infrastructure and most important, the applications to include people using this new application. So this is my topics and thank you very much.
Thank you,
Maybe
Bruno.
we have to discuss during the questions.
Thank you very much. Sergio, could you give us just the gist of the key ideas on your slides, please? As fast as you can. Sorry, I'm being unfair, I know. Okay.
While I get my slides on, let me just start by celebrating WITSA's decision to bring this event here to Brazil. It's a very, very significant event for the country, and I think it's a very timely event. And I want also to congratulate Giovanni Salomon, my good friend, president of ACESPR, for his courageous vision to actually do the stewardship on this event here in Brazil. So we're all very proud of it, and I hope sincerely that we all take this opportunity to profit from the debates and get the right outcomes of the event. Charts, please.
Could we have Sergio's charts, please?
Yes. Thank you. Next. Just a bit of an introduction. Next chart. Yeah. Brasscom is one of the three large ICT associations here in Brazil. Brasscom is the youngest one. We have 41 member companies, associate companies, and another 15 institutional associates as well. The companies actually are mixed in terms of their nationalities. We have Americans, Brazilian, French, Germans, Indian, Spanish, Mexican companies in the association. And they also represent a very nice combination of all the subsectors that operate in Brazil. We have services companies, we have software companies, we have hardware companies, semiconductor companies, and as well as companies that are devoted to this new, as I call, the internet economy space. Next one, please. In order to tackle the topic of this panel, what I decided is to take a few statistics and examples of what's happening in Brazil, or what has happened in Brazil in the last years. This chart combines at the bottom, in dark purple and white purple, the evolution of broadband lines here in Brazil. Started from negligible number of lines in 2009 all the way to 178,000 lines in total, which is the purple line above. 152 lines of them are broadband delivered over wireless services. Right at the bottom, at the top in blue is the pay TV penetration, and then traditional voice penetration. The dark layer is the fixed line phones, and the lighter layer is the old mobile or cellular technology. So as you see, the growth rate has been quite substantial, 5% growth rate per annum combined. Broadband lines growing faster at 35.6%. But the miracle actually happened with mobile phones and with mobile broadband connections. We grew 74.4% around these years. Okay, so mobile today responds for 85% of internet access mechanism for Brazilians. And this is really a revolution. And we tend to actually flip around in terms of actually producing public policies in terms of whether we should tackle the technology or not. And the main principle is that we should be technology agnostic, but we cannot ignore that technologies have different characteristics, different features, and different potential for penetration, especially in the country as heterogeneous as Brazil. Next chart, please. Speaking about heterogeneity, this chart, if you look at your left-hand side bar, has the average penetration of internet users, which is a different penetration than broadband users, right? And as you can see, in terms of a country average, we are at 56% penetration overall in the population. The dark green line aspect or stack bar is the number of users that are assisted in Brazil today, or coverage in Brazil today. In Brazil, our Bureau of Statistics distribute the population in 4 classes, social classes, starting from the bottom side with incomes, annual incomes up to $13,000 per annum, all the way to the A class, which is above $65,000 per annum. So one of the things we see clearly here in the chart with the blue stack bars is that penetration at the top levels in Brazil are not that bad, right? We are up of 80% penetration. And this would be equivalent to what we see in North America or Europe, for instance. But when we go down to the lower levels of incomes, then we see the heterogeneity panning out severely. In the C class, we only have 57%. In the lower classes, we have 28%. It's kind of like we combine within one country profiles that are from developed countries and emerging countries worldwide. So here is one of the challenges that we have to face, is the wealth, the power, the purchasing power capability of the poorer classes to actually adhere to the internet, whether by actually contracting your broadband services through telecom providers or even to buy the device to access the internet and internet services. Next chart. The second challenge is that the country itself, in its geography, is not uniform either. In the southeast and the southern zone, we have a very urbanized population, very concentrated in large cities like São Paulo with 20 million people in one urban blob. As we go further northeast and north, we get to all the way to the Amazon rainforest, where the population is extremely scattered around alongside the rivers. So coverage is an issue. And we still have 34% of our population actually living in the rural areas. But even in the urban areas, we have very small cities in the midst of Brazil. Bruno, I think, mentioned the national broadband plan that was issued by the government, and there are some lessons to be learned. One of them is that in spite of the vast amount of investment that were done by the government directly in building fiber backbones, constructing 21,000 kilometers of backbones, we only reach approximately 2.6 million broadband fixed lines out of these investments. But another thing that was actually done and was, I think, fruitful, it was that the government actually established some tax breaks on federal taxes to incentivize investment. And reports tell that at least the budget that was set aside for that reached $1.2 billion in terms of tax investments. So at this stage, I just want to highlight, we have 2 main challenges. To actually get to this vision, the worldwide vision of having everybody in the world, in the earth connected, in Brazil we have our own version of getting our population connected, irrespective of their wealth. And income, personal income, family's income is a big barrier, so we have to think of solutions for that. And I think we're going to address that later on in the session. But also we have to recognize that infrastructure is expensive. And companies that are doing actually that, they expect return on investment. And return on investments are getting longer and longer, okay? And the difficulties to actually provide services in rural areas, in a country that as big as Brazil, and if you put on the side the whole Latin America region, which has similar challenges, this is something that we also have to tackle from an economic point of view. So leave it to later, Santiago, and we'll discuss potential ideas to actually overcome these difficulties.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sergio. I think you're pretty coincident with some of the things that Manu said, as well as Bruno. But we can, summarize yours basically in 2 items, affordability and network coverage, right? Basically. Roberto, what is it going to be for you?
Okay, it's difficult, but at least one good news. I don't have slides, so maybe I can move fast.
Okay.
And actually, I have my computer, but I'm using
We are a bit limited of time, so we can get questions from the public.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well,
5 minutes, please.
so when I was invited to this panel, I didn't quite know what I was going to say. So, well, I could be easy with different environments, smart cities, and so on. But then I asked first question, what's broadband? What's the definition? And so I went to the internet, of course, and my access, which I don't know if it's broadband or not. And I found that there's a huge classification of countries using 256K as reference. Well, it doesn't look very fast these days, but that's it is. And then I kept looking, and I found that U.S. has, since last year, defined FCC reference of 25 megabits per second in downlink and 4 megabits per second in uplink. So that sounds more reasonable. So let's take that as a target. A lot of people have spoken here about the importance of infrastructure, how internet is important for a country, and also that the gap is not reducing. Anything may be enlarging. So I'm going to focus somewhere else. So one thing that is growing, and I think as a light guy, I think I should focus on technology. One thing is growing is the penetration of smartphones. That's making a difference. So everyone, or most of us, and not of us, even people which are in the lower bracket of the income that was just shown, are accessing internet through their phones, using WhatsApp, using Facebook. So to me, as I guess Bruno said, the future is mostly wireless because 50% of the world now already has smartphones. So that's the preferred way of accessing that particular device. We know much more about you than my poor old laptop sitting in my desk. So he'll be able to access more service, mobile service, and so on. So smartphones so as people mentioned here, so I'll look into wireless. Satellite's important for rural. Brazil's investing on that. Has some problems with latency and delay, and also power line communication, broadband power line. IEEE has a standard developed in that area, another complementary technology. So the technologies I see are really important for the future. It's one is the 5G or evolution of cellular technology, and the other one is the evolution of Wi-Fi as you see today. Today, I believe, I have a number for Europe, 70% of the data accessed in the world to internet is through Wi-Fi, and not through cellular, nor through fixed line. So, so we need to develop those 2 areas. Some people are hoping for a single standard. I don't think it will happen either. So 5G is looking for a 1 gigabits per second peak rate. So beats by far the 25 megabits that we have from FCC. And that's a tough goal. The other goal is that we have to multiply by 1,000 the capacity of the network. And an even more difficult challenge is to reduce the air interface delay to 100 microseconds. That will give about 1 milliseconds round-trip delay for service access. If you don't think that's a difficult challenge, just think that, have you ever heard that light is slow? I don't think so. I thought about that recently, someone talking about that. In 1 millisecond, light only travels 300 kilometers, right? 300 kilometers. So you cannot have your server very far from the application, from a device, if you're planning for 1 millisecond round-trip delay. So no server in the US and application in Brazil. Doesn't work. So that's a big challenge. And the other big challenge is to reduce the energy consumption in something like towards a magnitude in joules per bit. So that's a very simple summary of what I want from 5G. Now, talking about IEEE and 802.11, I actually forgot to mention there's I don't have one name, 1914.1 standard being developed for networking, what they call now front haul network, which is as opposed to back haul, mobile front haul, meaning the connection between the central baseband and the radio heads, which are closer to the user. It's almost like going back to the radio station, base station controller of the past in a more fancy way. And then IEEE is also developed Wi-Fi standard. You probably have heard that 802.11 AC and AD were the more recent standards that were approved. AC is for the 5 gigahertz band, already offering a 7 gigabits per second capacity. And then there's the AD, which is for 60 gigahertz bandwidth, and you offer also 7 gigabits per second capacity. But now there's more. And actually, you have to be careful. There are 3 standards coming up. So there's a AX, capital X, which will be the evolution of AC, the 2.45 gigahertz band, targeting 20 megabits per second. 20 gigabits per second overall capacity of the system. It's 7 gigabits in the AC. And the AY, which will be also 60 gigahertz, evolution of the AD, also targeting at 20 gigabits per second. And we have the AH, which is a standard for IoT, or IOE, whatever you prefer to call, meaning that standard for low power device, communicate, sensors, and so on, to be able to communicate in a somewhat higher speed. And so that's what's going to happen in technology world, in a very brief summary. Of course, the big challenge is how to use this to solve, and you have to create the solutions, the big problems we have today in humanity. If you look at the United Nations 2030 development goals, you see several areas from education to health to mobility to water quality that us as technologists and in internet technologies can help a lot. And I hope they could be able to hear something like that in the next panel in Smart City, when they should be addressing how we can improve the quality of life for everyone. Thanks very much. We'll be able to
Thank you, Roberto. You were very considerate with time. Appreciate it. And good ideas. Appreciate it. Now I'm going to open the floor for questions from our audience, please. Yes, we got a question over there. Could you state your name or anyone who asked a question, please? Name and institution.
Hello. It's a pleasure to be here with you guys. My name is Glaucimar. I'm from Goiânia, near Brasilia. And I want to talk about something that you all talk about, the goals of the broadband expansion in the world. So you talk about the affordability, the quality, and the coverage, and also the expansion of 5G. I agree with all you said, but you named some points that for me is the real big challenge, like the problems that we must solve to reach all these goals. You named the lack of tech knowledge, even the corruption. It's a big problem in Brazil. And lack of infrastructure. And I don't remember the other ones. The lack of free speech, one of them. So my question is about what is being done to achieve the resolution of these problems.
Would you like to tackle?
It's a great question, and your question to me at the end of my session was something I was thinking about as well. So I think for each of the buckets, we need to develop a strategy for overcoming them. So let's just take one. Lack of funds for infrastructure. It's a real problem. One of the things that we're trying to do for Global Connect is encourage the multilateral development banks, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, other financing organizations to do more connectivity and provide more financing to fund more projects. We're also trying to highlight some private sector solutions that are extending connectivity to remote areas through satellite, fiber, and other means that are at a lower cost. With respect to technical expertise for Global Connect, we thought it was really critical to partner with an organization like IEEE, which we have been partnering for over a year. And we even have our Global Connect Stakeholders Conference sponsored by IEEE. And there's a reason. Because we want the technologists helping the governments, helping the international organizations, the industry, also think through strategies at providing low-cost technical solutions to extend connectivity to remote areas and the areas that were mentioned. The other thing I'll just say that I've also been thinking about a lot is how do we build digital literacy and digital skills? Even in the United States, there are some studies, it's hard to really pinpoint, but we have 15% of our country that has a 5th or 6th grade education or less. Okay. So this is an issue that we have to think about when we're thinking about the internet, because these are not going to be individuals that are going to have the digital skills. It's a global challenge that I think we all have to really be thinking about through education and through other means. We have a lot of programs in the United States that are trying to incentivize more coding, more training at an elementary and secondary and high school level. But these are issues, and I guess to the question that was posed, it's very challenging to find clear solutions, but we are trying our best and trying to bring in new stakeholders like the banks, the technical community, and others who will have perspectives on what is the best way forward.
Thank you, Manu. Roberto, want to add something?
Yeah, just a quick comment. We heard this morning that the problem nowadays is not so much the dissemination of the internet, but it's also the use of the internet for that particular region. We are lagging, most developing nations are lagging on that second part. And I believe that that second part, you can use the innovation of the country to develop applications and services for that country using cheaper technology, social type of innovation. There are a lot of things that can be done without spending the same amount of money that you do in the more developed nations and serve appropriately that particular community.
Thank you very much. Any other question? Yes, we got a question. Raul, por favor.
Thank you. Raul Culture from CESPRO and WITSA. My question, I think I'll pick up from the latest Roberto's point. Was also my point here that I heard you speaking a lot of interesting things, and I thank you for that, about the infrastructure, about how do we do about bringing that infrastructure to more people. And that is, of course, necessary. But I sense an attitude of the type, if you build it, they will come. And we know by experience and for a fact that some of the most challenging things that we have in front of us regarding broadband have to do precisely with the applications that are going to develop in this broadband facilities that we're going to provide. Be it where we have millions of small traffic points like in IoT and in smart cities, or when you have a couple very demanding broadband eating applications like the OTT that pose severe challenges to the incumbent, to the regulated carriers nowadays. So how do we go about actually doing people to plan and to invest in developing a field, an equal field of regulatory and economic conditions so that we have the applications that will, in the end of the day, make it feasible for all of us, this new infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. Sergio, would you like to tackle that from the industry's perspective, please?
Sure. Sometimes I think we look at this problem as a chicken and the egg problem, and we ask ourselves what comes first, if it's the chicken or the egg. Well, I think that from what I've seen in my experience, that first we need to provide the service. People have to be connected. Everybody has to be connected. And everything will pan out in one way or the other. That happens in the technology industry as well. We first come with a faster hardware, and then the applications catch it up and exhaust the hardware, and then we need a new wave of hardware. And quite frankly, I mean, there is no easy problem, but we have to solve the hardest problem first, which is to attract investors to actually put out the money to put their infrastructure and to provide the service at the level that they can with the state of the art that there is available. So I think first lesson is for states to actually consider is to make it easier to induce investment. It's not through regulations or policy. It's more like with the talks with investors and provide the right incentives. So when I say that the government should actually consider tax breaks, is because this will be an investment and they will get their tax back in the future as the service expands and as it becomes more universal. The second thing is we have to provide the means for people to actually get access to the service. What we've seen here for the during the first 10 years of the penetration of cellular phones, and this was told by one of the presidents of our mobile operators, is that they invested $15 billion. They transferred $15 billion worth of subsidies to the poor population for them to add in or to get connected with prepaid services. And a lot of that was actually subsidies on the devices. We still need that. As we go into smartphones, and smartphones are an easier way to access, we need to actually help the poor to get access to the device, and sometimes we need even to help them to actually pay for the service. Once they have the service, and as digital transformation is making things much more intuitive, we all know that the market for applications will come. The innovators, the startups, or the big companies, they will come and they will provide the applications, and they will develop the applications. And even in terms of training, I think we need to train the people. We need to train in the universities, the experts, and so on and so forth. But within the families, even the youngsters will get that faster, and they will teach their parents, and they will teach their families.
Bruno, a few seconds, please. I'm sorry.
Sure. Just to add, because it's impossible to say everything, but to add two words, transparency and previsibility. So I think it's important to attract the private investment. So that's what we are trying to do with the countries. And if you see in Latin America, Caribbean, and even in North America, so trying to work with the administration to be previsible and transparent.
Thank you very much. One last question, please. Yes? State it as briefly as you can, please.
In the U.S., we're used to private applications like Facebook driving adoption. In Dubai, interestingly enough, they have an application called Dubai Now, and the government has been behind the creation of many government services, which are all accessible through a smartphone app. So the obvious question is, here in Brazil or elsewhere that you'd like to cover, is government-driven or private sector-driven going to be more effective?
It's all about partnership. I'm a strong believer of private sector actually leading investment and leading innovation, but obviously government has their part into it as well. And I think that is a good combination as both entities or both actors, social and economic actors actually, they get into the table and then divide the tasks. It's all about economical induction. That's what's been proven to be the most successful way of partnership within the country.
Excellent, Sergio. PPPs is a way to do that, okay? Now, fortunately, time is gone. I'm going to use the 2 minutes. I'm going to give half a minute to each of you, half a minute, to state one single recommendation to increase connectivity in areas that either cannot afford it or that they're not covered, whichever you want, okay? One simple recommendation that you think is effective, and one recommendation that you will be remembered by this audience. Ready? Who would like to go first? Roberto, you look like.
That's not fair. You're getting late for talking now for
well.
a big, tough question first.
Okay, it's not
Now,
fair.
I think we need government will, political will, to understand how important is internet access for a country and invest in public government partnerships so that we can achieve the goals, establish clear goals, and make sure that you don't have not a short-term investment, long-term investment to get the country up in this new digital era.
Excellent. Appreciate it. Sergio?
If we put the right policies, and if we get the population that is out there in it, they will explode in terms of their creative, innovative style, and they will profit from this. This is not a recommendation. It's also like a faith profession.
Okay. Bruno?
Attract investment, being transparent and previsible.
Very good. Thank you. Manu?
I think we need more playbooks of success. One country per region. What is it that they did, and how can they be a model for the rest of the region?
Okay. Thank you very much. Big round of applause for our panelists, please.